Do I look like a Brandy girl? Definitely not, but just humor me for a second. Today we're talking about Brandy Melville, if you couldn't tell by the title, and the only sort of Brandy-esque piece of clothing that I own. If you're new here, I'm Carla. I make video essays like these. I like to talk about pop culture, body image, fashion, and I also share more of my crochet, crafting, and life abroad content on my TikTok, which you can go and follow here. I'm also getting more in my blog era on YouTube, so if you want to watch any of that, then you know where to go. But today's video is a video essay. Please like the video if you do like it, and we're almost at 1,500 subscribers, so if you want to join, then go join. Without further ado, let's get into the video. So this video is obviously coming about after the Brandy Melville documentary on HBO. Lots of people are now talking about their negative experiences with Brandy Melville in light of this documentary, but we've all been aware of its questionable practices and questionable exclusivity for a long time. So I want to first get into a little bit of defining what exactly makes Brandy Melville Brandy Melville. So Brandy Melville is really different to other fashion brands that are aimed and targeted at young teens. And part of why it's different is because, yes, it's affordable, like, Forever 21 was, or H&M, or Zara. But what makes it different is that it's an affordable, fast fashion brand that is selling a lifestyle, not just a product. No one says, I'm an H&M girly, or I'm a Zara girly, or I was a Forever 21 girly. But despite it not being a luxury brand, you will, in fact, catch people saying, I'm a Brandy girl. And that's because they do a great job of selling you a specific lifestyle and not just a collection. If you take the brand away from the clothing, a lot of it is really simple, 90s nostalgia pieces, camis, tube tops, oftentimes plain, baby tees. And while maybe they were the first mainstream affordable brand to have some of these more nostalgic 90s styles that you would otherwise have to hunt for in a thrift store, overall their clothes are incredibly basic. So that makes you wonder, how did it become so popular and desirable and a status symbol amongst young girls? And this is largely thanks to Brandy Melville's marketing, and specifically any of their product shots and how much inspiration their aesthetic takes from sites like Tumblr and Pinterest, where young girls have gathered for years and years to cultivate their styles. Sorry, I need my matcha. And because it pulls so much of its, social media presence from the roots of social media, the imagery that they use is very lifestyle focused. It reminds you of the types of posts that you would see on Tumblr or Pinterest and pin because you want to live that lifestyle. So it's usually a young girl with, her hair flowing. She's probably on a New England beach town or in front of some neutral or pastel colored buildings and wearing plain and understated but super tiny outfits. Kind of just living a life where the most glamorous thing about her isn't necessarily, a tank top, but the fact that she is a girl about town and incredibly thin. In the HBO documentary Brandy Melville and the Cult of Fast Fashion, the brand was described as this. Brandy Melville was for the kind of basic but very trend-aware girl. And The Guardian described the brand as tiny outfits accentuating pre-adult metabolisms, exposed midriffs so taut they seem to be begging for a tape measure, long hair flowing cheerily in motion, overwhelmingly white. Most of the brand's pieces sold for less than $40, and one size fits all, that size being small. Of course, Brandy Melville, as we all probably know, changed their sizing to one size fits most, but they didn't change their sizing range. So yeah, Brandy Melville isn't necessarily selling you plain tank tops, and that's why they're so successful. They're selling you a body, an aesthetic, and a lifestyle that's unattainable for many. Also, if you're watching this part of the video, comment the pink heart emoji. Okay, I was really cold in just that tiny top. I don't know how those Brandy girls do it. Just kidding, it's just cold in my flat. I'm going to be honest with you, I, like many girls my age at the time, wanted to be a Brandy girl. I found the aesthetic really appealing. I found the clothes simple and not so loud, like some of the items I was seeing at Forever 21. And I spent a lot of time on Tumblr and Pinterest as a kid, and I'm still on Pinterest all the time now. And it was the first brand I saw that made the clothes that I was seeing in these posts. And even though Brandy Melville is fast fashion and it is extremely cheap, it wasn't something that I could afford as a kid. I was more a sales rack, clearance rack of Forever 21 kind of gal. And for that reason, and many, many others, which we're going to get into soon, I was never going to be a Brandy girl. So let's get into some of the problems with the Brandy girl aesthetic and just with Brandy Melville as a company overall. And just to note, this is only scratching the surface because there's a lot going on with Brandy Melville, from its politics, from private group chats, stealing designs, etc., etc. So this is just a short little video essay, but if you want to read more, consult the sources that I cite and also watch the documentary, of course. First, we'll talk about the toxic environment that is a Brandy Melville store. The Guardian spoke to former store managers and employees of Brandy Melville stores, and almost all of them, according to this article, suffered with eating disorders. Almost all of them were recruited in-store while they were shopping before being employees, which hints a little bit to the very intrusive nature with which they would recruit their store staff, much like Abercrombie or Hollister back in the day, and gives us an idea of how superficial this recruitment process is. And these former employees interviewed by The Guardian described the CEO as a suspicious and vindictive presence. And Marcin is the CEO who basically doesn't exist. There's about 3 images of him on Google search, according to Eva Orson, who is the director of this documentary. He's never done an interview, etc., etc. He's a very opaque figure to the public, and that is by design. This is the type of person who does not want to be known. They want to continue whatever practices they are practicing in private. The Cut did a scan of Glassdoor reviews of Brandy Melville stores. Here's what some of the reviews said. Your pay rate is 100% determined by your appearance. You will get fired for gaining weight or cutting your hair. You will not get hired at a Brandy store if you're black. And my first reaction to this, especially the last one, is definitely a big yikes, but also based on our collective trauma with stores like Abercrombie, Hollister, and literally just walking into a Brandy Melville store and checking out the vibes, is that I'm not really surprised, you know? We kind of expect these practices, and we kind of know that that's what's going on behind the scenes if we walk into a store and all of the people working there look a certain way. Speaking about what was going on behind closed doors, let's talk about Marcin and why he is allegedly a very creepy and bigoted boss. So according to the documentary and this article from The Guardian, shop employees, who are usually girls around the age of 16, it's very young and that is a minor, would have to pose for their daily photograph each morning or each time that they got to work. These were photos of their outfit, but sometimes they would also, get a photo of the feet or of the neckline. This was supposed to be for brand research, so sometimes the photos were also texted to and kept, saved to his phone, by Marcin. He reportedly preferred skinny redheads, he liked Asian girls, and didn't want a lot of black people. So if you wondered why and how Brandy Melville has such a curated aesthetic, part of it is thanks to Marcin. And keep in mind that the girls at these stores are regular teenage girls for the most part. They're girls who were shopping at Brandy because they wanted to fit that aesthetic or live that lifestyle. Maybe they fit it well enough and were recruited to work in the stores. But making them take daily photographs for brand research is very, very strange. They're not professional models, they're not stylists, they're not designers. They're literally shop employees and they are minors. And while this level of attention to detail does build a really strong brand image, brand personality, much like the standards at Abercrombie or Hollister for their store employees, it is extremely intrusive and harmful. And it explains why it was possible for people to be fired for cutting their hair or gaining weight. These changes would not go unnoticed by Marcin or by management at these stores, which would normally and legally be considered very discriminatory and illegal to fire someone on the basis of their appearance. But anything to keep the brand image going, right? Another former employee in the New York flagship store recalls how Marcin installed a button at the register, which he would flash if he spotted a Brandy girl checking out whom he wanted hired and photographed. We are not hiring based on skills. We're not hiring people based on their passion for retail. We are hiring them because they fit the aesthetic and because we want to control their looks in the future so that they can stay employed. And much worse, we're hiring them because this man saw them, pointed them out, and said, I want her to work here. And it's not just within the Brandy Melville stores or within Brandy Melville HQ where we see all of these horrible issues, but also in the social media promotion, both from the company and from fans of the brand on the internet. So of course, Brandy Melville's aesthetic and social media presence very much comes from internet, Tumblr, Pinterest culture that already existed. They obviously perpetuate these unrealistic body standards with their teeny tiny clothes and only showing certain models on their website. But let's also talk about just regular old people posting about and promoting Brandy Melville for free. Even though it's a teen brand, and like The Guardian said, most of the girls that they show on their website are in pre-adult bodies. People of all ages wear Brandy Melville, and it is kind of a staple on social media for basic items. This article talked about that a bit, about how wearing Brandy Melville is kind of embarrassing, but also kind of not, as someone who's in their 20s, and that a lot of fashion girlies are like, what do you mean, where did I get this basic tank top? Brandy Melville, duh. And people would be like fake embarrassed that they wear it. And of course, I'm not saying that anyone who posts about their outfits on social media has to buy everything from sustainable brands or everything secondhand or make their own clothing themselves from scratch. I know that that's not realistic, but let's call it what it is. And it is promoting a brand, one, for free, and two, promoting a brand whose values you probably don't even agree with. Eva Orner said to Vanity Fair, "There are these armies of young girls advertising for these evil companies who are just laughing all the way to the bank. A lot of young girls know that the company is not great, but they still shop there. There comes a point in your life where you have to decide, what kind of person do I want to be? When a brand's been exposed as being really shit, you can get clothes elsewhere. The fact that people are so locked into this brand is really surprising." The last point, that it's really surprising, I do not agree with at all. I'm not going to get into the ethics of wearing fast fashion as a concept because that's such a big issue, but I think we can all agree that a lot of people can only afford fast fashion, and that young girls aren't necessarily to blame when they're being inundated with messaging that they have to fit a certain aesthetic, and then they go out and buy the clothes to match that aesthetic. I've talked about this a bit in this video about overconsumption, and I do think that individual actions are so important, and I would encourage you to not buy fast fashion and to not waste money on brands who don't care about you and don't care about the things that you care about. But I understand and expect for people to still do so. But it is really sad and disappointing, but I wouldn't call it shocking. And I do agree with Orner in saying that you have to decide what kind of person you want to be and where you want to spend your money. And I think having conversations like these can help us to do just that. That being said, like I say in all of my videos, I think the solution to these big problems like these that us as individual consumers can act on is, voting with our dollar, having these conversations, raising awareness, and questioning ourselves and our own choices. Orner echoed this, saying the power's in the consumers who don't buy the product, and if we don't let them get away with it, we have all the power. They're just making stupid clothing. Obviously, that's a bit of a simplistic summing up of the issue and what we can do about it, but in principle, it is true, or at least I believe so. If we can get past, the allure, the aesthetic, the promise of a certain lifestyle, the promise of a certain body, then that's when we have the confidence and the boldness to decide not to participate in certain trends, not to give our money to certain brands, etc., etc. And I think especially when we're aware of how horrible the people at the head of these companies are, that makes the decision much easier, knowing that they're laughing all the way to the bank, all the while exploiting young women and girls. A lot of people that Orner and her team reached out to for this documentary actually didn't even want to be involved, and she said that it was more difficult than documentaries that she's made about, like, war, for example. Of course, Brandy Melville isn't worse than war, but it goes to show the power of Marcin and how scared people were of sharing their experiences and being punished for doing so. But since this documentary came out, which was a way of starting this conversation about Brandy Melville, more people have reached out to Orner wanting to share their experiences about working for or at their stores. And that's a great thing and a sign of progress and a sign of people opening their eyes to the cult of fast fashion. So I would say to just continue this conversation and speak out about and against any negative, illegal, harmful experiences that you have had or that others you know have had at the hands of big clothing brands. That was it for today's video essay. I hope you enjoyed it. Go out there, put on your cutest Brandy Melville or Brandy Melville-esque outfit that's not from Brandy Melville, and enjoy your day, baby, because we're all better than Brandy girls in my eyes. I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments about Brandy Melville. Did you shop there? Do you shop there? Will you stop? And I'm also curious to know, like, did you ever feel included by their marketing and branding? Please do like and subscribe if you want to see more of this. It really does help me out. And I hope to see you next time. Bye!